Somalia is gearing up to engage its international partners in a conference set to kick off in London this Thursday. The country is currently facing serious food shortages, threatening more than half of its population. The meeting will also discuss the strategy against Qaeda-linked Al Shabaab. The AU military mission AMISOM is also supposed to start winding down its operations later this year. But concerns are growing over whether Somali security forces will be capable of taking over. Neighboring Kenya is also still planning to close the Dadaab refugee camp by the end of this month, which could mean tens of thousands heading back to Somalia. Well, let's get to more perspective on this upcoming meeting. CGTN's Richard Bestek joins me from London and Abdulaziz Billo from the Somali capital of Mogadishu. Richard, let's start with you. Now, of course, this conference essentially is meant to pick up from where the 2012 summit left off. But just tell us, what are the particular goals this time around?
Well, Lindy, this conference is all about the spectre of famine, drought, but critically also security. According to the UK Foreign Office, improving security is vital to preventing a return to the open conflict across Somalia. And from that will come broader political and economic development. So there'll be a good deal of focus on the security structures which must be agreed between the federal government and the member states, including what the Somali National Army should look like in the future. But at a time when half the Somali population are without reliable access to food, as you were saying there, Lindy, the conference also offers an opportunity, at least, to step up the international response to the ongoing drought and the humanitarian need that arises from it. The Foreign Office here in London says both security and continued and reliable international humanitarian aid are critical. Somalia they're critical if Somalia is not to slip back into the anarchy that existed before that 2012 conference, Lindy.
And indeed, that call for sustained international assistance, and it does sort of echo some of the sentiments of the 2012 conference. But Abdulaziz, looking at Somalia today, what tangible results or changes emerged from that previous London conference?
Well, Lindy, this is the third London conference on Somalia, but also the fifth international conference to take place for Somalia since 2011. The first one was in 2011 and 2012 rather, and it was under the transitional federal government here. That government could not be able to sign bilateral agreements because it was a transitional government. But then again, during the previous government under Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud, there were a series of conferences on Somalia. One took place in London, another one in Brussels, and the third one took place in Copenhagen, Denmark. So all these, all donor community came together to inject a new hope and new life into the Somali security sector and also the justice reform sector, as well as the social economic aspect. But going back to your question, Lindy, there's no tangible result yet on the ground here in Somalia over the past years, because if we bear in mind the previous administration, the challenges of security here on the ground were quite immense. As we remember, in 2011 and 2012 and 2013, African Union forces were pushing back the militants from the vast south-central regions of Somalia. And once they pushed them out, that's when the environment could be sustainable. So the government is of the view right now that it's going to this summit much more prepared, and the president is focusing on security and drought, and they want to strengthen the new government so that it can be able to deliver on its promises, Lindy.
Well, as you heard there, Richard, Abdulaziz telling us that the immense security challenges in Somalia make it difficult for summit resolutions to be implemented effectively. So this time around, how do the organizers of the conference hope to achieve their main objectives?
You're absolutely right, Lindy. The challenges facing this conference are immense. The conference essentially will attempt to agree a so-called new partnership agreement between the international community and Somalia. That will require terms for international support if Somalia's slide into famine is to be prevented. It will also require agreement on issues such as elections and commitments inside Somalia tackling corruption. Again, according to the UK Foreign Ministry, that will be based on the principle of accountability. Agreement here in London, Lindy, is not by any means a foregone conclusion.
Indeed, absolutely. Well, coming back to you finally, Abdulaziz, you say, of course, that Somalia is going into this conference with a new leadership, a new president. What would you say then will be the key areas that Somalia will be looking for support from its international partners?
Well, Lindy, for one, the African Union force that has played a commendable role here in Somalia since 2007 in pacifying the Al Shabaab will start ending its mission here in Somalia. Uganda, for instance, said that it's going to start a troop drawdown by the end of 2017. So that is expected to start towards the end of this year, even though there's been no formal statement yet regarding that troop drawdown. And also, the Somali government is saying that the only way for the security of the country to be stable is if a strong Somali police force and a strong army is in place. So one of the factors, one of the presentations that President Farmajo, and he has also agreed with the same regional leaders here on that modality, is that the government should have a strong Somali National Army comprising of 18,000 servicemen. It's these 18,000 forces, including the ones who have already been trained, who will take up from the African Union peacekeeping force AMISOM here. It's quite a big challenge for them, and also Somalia is going there at a critical time, especially bearing in mind that 6.2 million, nearly half of the country's total population, is in need of food assistance. Today there was a meeting there, and it was being chaired by Peter de Klerk, the humanitarian coordinator here for Somalia, where he addressed the needs on the ground here and the need for the donor community to speed up the aid for Somalia so that it doesn't fall into famine. We understand that he's saying that we understand there's several challenges facing the African continent, but Somalia should not be forgotten at this stage. And also, the president is going there with a social economic development plan. The plan includes, because the president, once he was elected, he did some traveling around Arab nations where they promised that they're going to help in the rebuilding of the country. So one thing that the government will be asking the donor community there is to live up to the expectation of supporting Somalia at this critical juncture so that it can be able to rebuild and have a strong security sector so that it remains a safe environment for investors and also safe environment for Somalis and its neighbors. Lindy.
Well, indeed, we will be watching to see what resolutions emerge from that conference. It gets underway on Thursday. Thanks very much to Richard Bestek joining us there from London, and of course Abdulaziz Billo in the Somali capital of Mogadishu.